In 2005, I learned an important lesson about influence. I just finished studying abroad in Western Europe, and the Office of International Studies reached out to ask me if I could help them attract more minority students to the program. I said, yeah, but give me some time to figure things out. See, up until then, they tried everything. They took out ads in the school newspaper. They held lunch and learns because, let's be honest, that's the only way to attract college students. And they had a table set out in the courtyard where everyone could see them. They did everything right, but none of it seemed to work. And it took me a while, but I figured it out. I went to another office, the Office of African American Student Services and Programs, because that's where a lot of students like me would hang out. And in the break room where everyone would sit to eat lunch, I put up this giant poster. And on that poster it said, "The following students would like to thank you for paying your international fee." And at the time, the fee was around $11 per semester, and every enrolled student paid it. But here's the thing, a significant chunk of those fees went towards paying for scholarships. And since there were so few applicants, the question wasn't whether or not you would get the scholarship. It was, well, how much could you expect to receive if you actually applied? And I knew that it wouldn't sit well with people to know that they'd help to fund somebody else's trip. Now, some people may have questioned my tone or my tactic, but you couldn't question the results. Almost immediately, there was a double-digit uptick in minority students studying abroad, and I became an ambassador for the program. The Office of International Studies was happy, the Office of African American Student Services was happy, and I was happy because I helped dozens of people take advantage of a program that had the potential to fundamentally change their life. This experience taught me that to truly influence people, you have to understand their culture. And when you do this, you can communicate in ways that resonate deeply and might even offend them or feel awkward to outsiders, but is incredibly effective. And when you can do this well, there will be tons of people lined up asking you to be their translator.
Now, I didn't know Julien back then, but if I did, I probably wouldn't have dated him. But back when we started our blog in 2017, you could say we took a similar approach. Prior to that, we'd read dozens of FIRE blogs, and we were intrigued. We'd go home, crunch some numbers, move things around, and say, you know what? We could achieve financial independence in like 10 years if we really pursued it. And we'd be so excited until we went to share the articles on Facebook and were met with dead silence. I mean, crickets. At first, I thought there was something wrong with Facebook. And so I would post something weird or ratchet just to see if I could get a response. And sure enough, I would. Minutes later, there'd be dozens of comments about how those puppies really did look like fried chicken. There was just something about the financial content that we were posting that wasn't resonating with the people we were sharing it with. And to put it quite simply, it was that the people that were centered in the articles didn't look like them. The tactics were good, the intent was there, but the tone and the messenger was different. Our people thought we weren't talking to them, and so they did what anybody would do in that situation. They ignored it. And this was troubling to us because we believed then, just like what we believe now, that what we were sharing was a really powerful pathway to build wealth for our community. We didn't want them to miss out, so we had to find a way to make the message resonate. We had to make them care. So we started catering to them. We ignored what other bloggers were doing, and we found our own voice. If anything, we tried to sound like what they were already watching. In our earliest business models, we said things like, we want to be the Anthony Bourdain of finance. And even now, whenever we talk to brands or business partners, we create those similar metaphors, similar cultural bridges to help them understand our ambition and our voice. We're writing a book right now, and we just had a meeting with our, thank you, we just had a meeting with our editorial team at Penguin Random House, and we were talking about our ambitions for our little book baby. And we said, no lie, we said we wanted to have the impact of the Cosby Show, but be as universal as Boyz II Men. We're talking about a book. It's been about 4 years since we started our blog, and it's safe to say that we're pretty happy with how things have turned out. We've won a couple of awards, gotten a few major media mentions, we've signed a book deal, and we've had the privilege of partnering with some of the biggest brands in the world. That's not to say we haven't made a lot of mistakes. We have made a ton of mistakes, but we've learned a lot in the process, and that's why we're here today to share a key lesson with you, our fellow content creators. And that's, there's no greater tactic more important than what we call finding the intersection.
So what does that even mean? Well, to us, finding the intersection means you understand that decisions aren't made in a vacuum, that one important decision someone makes in their financial life is going to have an impact on another important part of their life. And to help them navigate the tension this creates, you have to meet them where that tension exists, at the intersection. Everyone listening today that's here, virtual and in person, is comfortable talking about money. Most of the people that read your blogs, listen to your podcasts, and watch your videos are comfortable talking about money too. But what about everyone else? What about the vast majority of people that don't wake up super excited to have in-depth financial conversations? How do you reach them? Well, you don't get them to care by forcing them to think like you. And you don't get them to care by speaking more or louder about money. You get people to care by talking about the things that are already important to them and helping them realize how money affects it. And there are two reasons this approach is effective. The first is when you do this, you immediately stand out from the crowd. There are likely thousands of financial and money experts out there, but there are significantly fewer who speak Spanish. And there are even fewer who are familiar with the issues that are impacting the Latinx community and can give you a dope-ass recipe for ropa vieja like Janice at the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast, or who can talk about important issues like fatherhood and also give you a craft beer recommendation like Joel and Matt of the How to Money podcast. But the second reason this is important is because when you do this, you immediately become a part of conversations that you otherwise would not have been invited to. Every single minute, there are tens of thousands of pieces of content being published about money. And during that same period of time, there are probably millions of pieces of content being published about a variety of other subjects. So when you zero in on how finance intersects with all of these other areas of your audience's life, you become a more frequent, a familiar, and relevant voice in their life instead of just the money guy.
But there's a even bigger opportunity that you as a content creator should be thinking about beyond creative benefits. It's making the most of your brand partnerships. Now, before I did this full time, I was working in corporate supporting thousands of sales reps across the globe. And I learned a very early and important lesson from a mentor who taught me the difference between a sold good and a sought good. A hotel room is a sought good. People know to look for it. When they're planning a vacation, they automatically plan for a hotel room. A timeshare is a sold good. People need to be told about it, convinced, maybe even persuaded. Now, most financial services and products fall into the sold good category. I'm not telling you you need to be a timeshare salesman, but I am telling you that very few people wake up and think, whoo, I sure could use an app that rounds my purchases to the next dollar so I can save for retirement. Somebody has to tell them about it. And because of that, brands face the same challenges we do. They're constantly trying to attract people that just aren't that into them. They have products, features, announcements that they put out and don't do as well as they think they should. Brands honestly aren't that different from the Office of International Studies that Julien helped as a student. A lot of times they're doing all the right things. They have great intentions, but they're not meeting their customer where they're at. And the reason most of them aren't doing it is because they can't. Think about it this way. If you're in New York City, there's two ways to receive a package: via delivery truck and via bicycle courier. Brands, they're the delivery truck, and there are a lot of benefits to being a delivery truck. You can move more packages, you can carry heavier freight, you can go longer distances without ever taking a rest. But us, content creators, we're the bicycle courier, and there's a lot of benefits there too. We can weave in and out of cars, we can avoid traffic, and we're nimble enough to deliver a hot cup of soup to somebody's doorstep before it gets cold. Both delivery trucks and bicycle couriers get the job done, but each of us can do something that the other one can't. Our job is to find the intersection. So if you know where a brand's potential customer lives and how they talk and where they feel, what they're feeling, then that brand may be willing to pay you to get their attention. And if you can demonstrate that you understand how their customer talks and more importantly, how they hear things, then that brand may also be willing to pay you to be their translator. But none of this is possible if you don't understand the brand first. And I'm not talking about what products they make or the features of their app. I'm talking about who they are, what their mission is, what their vision is, how their organization is set up. If you can understand that, then it's much easier for you to find the intersection of how you can help them, and together you can create a partnership that's mutually beneficial. Which leads me to another reason to build this skill. Because at some point, whenever you're talking to big brands, the conversation ultimately boils down to budget. And it's in the best interest of the person that you're negotiating with to keep their costs as low as possible. But if in your pitch, you can figure out how to incorporate the objectives of another department, then instead of pushing back on you to lower your rate, it's smarter for that brand to go to the other department and see if they'll split the cost. Even if they can't, let's say it's a small company, they don't have multiple departments or only one has budget, if you can figure out a way to creatively check the box on multiple objectives in your content, at the very least, you'll gain internal advocates, which could lead to future business opportunities for you. The point is, if it's a win for 2 or more teams in any company, it's a win for you.
So what does this even look like? Well, one of our favorite examples is a project we did for a small company based out of California called Facebook. Maybe you've heard of them. They reached out and asked us to record a special episode of Money on the Table to celebrate Juneteenth. And in it, we prepared a meal that was inspired by the holiday. We answered a couple of questions from their employees. And because we just so happen to own one of those virtual reality headsets, the Oculus Quest, which is owned by Facebook, we incorporated that into the opening of the video. See, this way, in one video, the HR team, the diversity and inclusion team, the Facebook Watch team, and the virtual reality team would be happy, and everyone would feel like we were talking directly to them. We've been using this tactic to grow our business and our brand for the last 3 years, and it is our bread and butter. So where do you get started? How do you begin exploring more intersections and collaborating with more brands? Well, start with the areas the brands are already telling you are important to them. Facebook didn't tell us to include the Oculus Quest into that video, but we did some quick research and learned that over 1/5 of their employees were now working on virtual reality. So it's clear, it's important to them. Now you can Google this information and go to their webpage, but I'd encourage you to go beyond just the homepage. Go to the corporate information about us. It might say corporate responsibility or community, but that's where these brands are telling you what's important to them and how it relates to their core business. You might even find yourself venturing onto the careers page, where they're trying to attract more employees, but also telling those people what they want them to care about. Now, this is going to require you to be more than just build a large audience. You're going to have to learn and understand the culture of your shared audience and have a proven ability to communicate with those people effectively. This means you may find yourself talking about things like food or fashion, hobbies, or music, in addition to being a financial resource. You might venture into uncomfortable political conversations or talking about your religious leanings and how both of those shape your financial life. You might find yourself admitting that you've been completely wrong about something in the past or someone. The point is, the more you share with your audience, the more they share with you. And the more they share with you, the more you understand the forces that shape their thinking.
Like Julien said, finding the intersection has been the bread and butter of our entrepreneurial journey. Our book, Cashing Out, which comes out next year, explores the intersection of culture and money. Our digital series, Money on the Table, sits at the intersection of food, travel, and money. Our podcast, Rich and Regular, explores the intersection of life and money. And every brand collaboration we've done has been about connecting the dots between something that brand offers and something else that's already at the forefront of our community's minds. We've made a deliberate choice to create financial content for people who wouldn't normally look for financial content. And we're not being different just for the sake of being different. We're being different because that's how you stand out in a crowded field. That's how you ensure your voice is heard in a noisy arena. It takes courage, but I'll tell you something, the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. And I'll tell you something else, it's a privilege to live here. It's a privilege to have access to the hearts and minds of thousands of strangers. So if you do decide to find the intersections, don't just do it because it's lucrative. Do it because it's impactful. Do it because you know that you're introducing something to someone that could improve their lives. And because they've only ever seen things in their lane and only rock with things that are popular in their lane, you have the honor of being the person that introduces them to an idea. You join the long list of firsts that are forever burned in their memories. And that is one of the best feelings in the world. Thank you.